Welcome, welcome to the 19th Urban Leadership Forum and Awards. Since 2005, the Penn Institute for Urban Research has recognized innovations in urban affairs through the Urban Leadership Award. This is the 19th year that we are doing this, and the leaders whom we choose are those who bring cities to be resilient, sustainable, and very equitable in their futures. With support from the Nussdorf family, in 2021, Penn IUR named the award in honor of one of our first Trust Advisory Boards meeting, Lawrence C. Nussdorf, whose professorship I also hold. Larry was a wonderful guide to our advisory board, and now Melanie Nussdorf, his wife, is part of our family as well. Larry really was passionate about cities, particularly about their enduring value to the society and to the exemplary leaders whose forward thinking paves the way for today and the future of our cities. So this year, our 2024 forum will honor Jaime Alberto Pumarejo Heins, who's the former mayor of Barranquilla, Colombia, and currently the chief executive of Breeze, which he'll tell you about. Andrew Melnik, a former international projects manager in Kyiv, who at the time of the war stopped his work and went back to Bucha to help serve as an intermediary for those who were helping Bucha, the city you may remember from 2022, of the international publicity it received for the difficulties, the atrocities that occurred there, in helping them think about rebuilding, as well as other cities through Ukraine, and bringing international attention to the needs of rebuilding. And Lauren Sorkin, Executive Director of the Resilient Cities Network, and actually part of our family in the sense that, as you may or may not know, the 100 Resilience Project, which was started by Judith Rodin, the former president of University of Pennsylvania, was something that Lauren was deeply involved in charge of the Southeast Asian region, and then when the program was closed, became the leader of the Resilient Cities Network, which was all the climate resilient officers who came together and are keeping that movement alive. So you have their bios in your invitation. Susan?
And it is also our pleasure today to present to our exemplary students an award that Larry Nussdorf and Larry Nussdorf's family also endowed. Larry Nussdorf deeply valued the brilliance and enthusiasm of Penn's undergraduate students who seek out opportunities to better understand how cities work and how we might address the critical issues they face for a better future for all. And this year, it's our great pleasure to present the 2024 Lawrence C. Nussdorf Student Award to 3 students who have all exemplified the goals of this program for all of our students serving as models. They participated in Penn IUR's undergraduate programming. They contributed and deepened urban knowledge. So their bios are on the last page here for your reference and for your enjoyment. They are really exemplary. But now may I call up to receive their awards, not in alphabetical order, actually, the 3 awardees for this year, starting with Joey Zhang. Please hold your applause. Joey Zhang, Marielle Kang, and Khalid Mohaden. Thank you so much. We soon will thank you again. We soon will have the opportunity to socialize more and enjoy our meal. But first, we have the great opportunity of speaking to this year's awardees, hearing directly from them, and then opportunity for a bit of a moderated conversation, and then your questions. So perhaps we can start as we have the Mayor, with your comments on highlights of your accomplishments and challenges.
Well, I think it's hard to speak on what are the highlights of accomplishments, but I would tell you that the highlights of what we were able to do in Barranquilla is first, get everybody involved into a common goal or a common vision. And that was taking a city that was troubled and battled, as I said before in our small meeting, bankrupt, and then trying to take it into a city that was thriving once again. So the first thing was regaining trust. And for every great endeavor, you need trust once again. So that meant, for example, I remember in 2008 when we got into office and I was working for the current mayor. I was 27 years old. The first thing we did was get people to have small like trinkets. So every time somebody would come to the mayor's office or to the treasury to pay taxes, property tax or whatnot, we would give them something that said "Thank you for believing," and that would spark something that says something's changing, or just saying like I remember our slogan was "It's time to get back to work," and it's time to put the house in order. Stuff like that started getting people, and then early small wins would get people to trust us again. And then when they got their trust, we started going for loftier and loftier goals. So we started building positive momentum, and we broke a vicious cycle, and we began what I call a virtuous cycle. And to me, the great importance of that is it became a roadmap that started getting other cities to want to copy us in a way, and it showed others that you can actually do a lot even though you're in a developing country, even though you have scarcity of resources, even though you have all these problems. Like for example, immigration that 10% of our population is currently Venezuelans. They came in the last 4 years. And instead of saying this is a problem, we said like, how are we going to integrate them quickly and make them part of our workforce? And how are we going to make sure that this hurts less? Because it does hurt. You have to allocate resources. You have to spend, and you have to see people suffering because you can't give them what they need. But in a sense, if you integrate them quickly, then you make them part of that virtuous circle and not of a vicious cycle. And I think that has been, in a way, the great miracle of a city is everybody finding common goals and understanding that even though there are things that drive us apart, if you find those common goals and you look at them and you talk about those and you less about the things that divide us, then people start coming together. And for example, in climate change, we don't talk about CO2 emissions, and we don't talk about the need for biodiversity. We talk about every time we better the quality of air, we're bettering your health and your children's. Every time we recuperate a pond, we're bettering the quality of life. Every time we spend on the marshlands and the wetlands, we're giving you public spaces that you can rely on and your children can rely on. And I think that has been the difference.
Lauren, you are head of the network of resilience, the Resilient Cities Network. How do you define resilience?
Thank you, Jeannie, and I'm happy to talk about how we define urban resilience and the journey that we've been on with the Resilient Cities Network and 100 Resilient Cities. But first, I really need to just appreciate you and Susan and the Institute because it's very special to be honored when you're in the thick of it, right? You haven't declared victory, but you're actually in the trenches doing the work. And I think I sit here with two other resilience warriors, and it's really energizing. And a very dear friend of mine said to me just a couple of months back, "Ooh, Lauren, this coalition building, this network building, it's exhausting. I have no interest in doing anymore. I'm so glad you do." And as I was planning for this panel, her words kept ringing in my ears because it's really incredibly energizing to get recognition from a research institute when I've never discovered anything to do with urban affairs. I don't have any breakthrough technologies for climate. My only real superpower is finding the right people who are willing to come together to do the right thing in response to complex challenges. which is why I run a network. But I also have to say that it was a big honor to talk about resilience and urban resilience to receive the Lawrence Nussdorf Prize, because I have to admit, when I got the email, I didn't know who Lawrence was. And so I looked him up, and I found out actually that we had some things in common, because his name is Lawrence Nussdorf and my name is Lauren Nicole Sorkin. So for those of you who know me, I use LNS as my initials and sign off as everything, so I thought that was really cool. Lawrence was born in New Jersey to Jewish parents, like I was. He really used his professional talents to engage public and private sector and to try to make connections that would create opportunities for others. And so that really resonated very deeply with me. And to say that this has been a difficult time over the last 6 months for Jewish communities, I think is an understatement, and certainly Penn has had some of those difficulties too. And I think I really appreciate that there's a platform that's been created by a generation of individuals who have set up pathways to do the right thing, not only for your own community, but for others. And so I really feel honored to get this award in his name today, and I think it's a responsibility for all of us Jewish people who are working in sustainability and equity to use our platforms to say that we need peace, we need a ceasefire, and we need a rules-based solution to the current challenge, because what's happening is not tolerable. But this is not a political platform, this is one about resilience. So I want to now pivot and really dive deep into how we define urban resilience in cities. And we owe that history, we owe that ambition to create a bold and broad vision to Judith Rodin, who now almost 15 years ago wrote a book called A Resilience Dividend after Hurricane Sandy, and said, we need to help cities to think about things in the medium term and to think about their risks and opportunities in a holistic way, the same way a corporation would have a chief risk officer. We need to create a new profession, a new way of thinking. And so Rockefeller Foundation, along with Arab and a number of other research partners, they put together a framework for resilience and defined resilience as the capacity for communities, individuals, businesses, and institutions in a city to survive, adapt, and thrive no matter what shock or stress they face. Now that's pretty bold and broad, but that is, as you say, Helen was the face that launched 1,000 ships. That was the definition that launched 100 cities. And the Rockefeller Foundation invested $168 million in creating a platform for change. And there were two very different things that Rockefeller did in doing that. One is, they said, we're going to invest in people. Because unless we find people like Jaime who are willing to create trust in their cities and be leaders, and they have the right tools and frameworks to do that, we're never going to win this thing. We have to focus on the people. And so we spent 10 years working with 100 cities and building the strength of resilience teams in those cities to create strategies and to create capabilities in the city governments and strategies. And then what happened after that, maybe as a story for the next intervention, but just to give a quick preview and a flash forward about what the power of resilience and trust and networks can do. After 6 years, we had 100 cities, we had over 80 resilience strategies, over 4,000 initiatives, and the Rockefeller Foundation said, good for us. We've done a great job, and we're going to declare victory on creating resilient strategies. And the cities and the network said, whoa, hold up. We want to now implement this work. Who's going to support us and implement this work? And so myself and my colleagues at the network co-designed with our city members a network that now serves three functions. One is to empower cities and have them run city-to-city diplomacy. The next is to work together on implementation. The last is to drive investment. And what that enabled us to do was to then get more investment into keeping the network together. And we were able to announce that the network would continue to support cities just at the end of 2019. And people were still asking the question, why holistic resilience? Why are we focusing just on climate and equity? Why holistic resilience? And then what happened in 2020? COVID hit. And it was February. And for those of you who know me or know where I've been based for the last years, I was living in Singapore for 7 years. I'm a wife in a Jewish family, so we celebrate the Lunar New Year. And I was texting my cities in China, and I said, Happy New Year. And they said, oh, hi, Lauren, Happy New Year. Sorry if we haven't responded to your emails. We're running the city from our mobile phones. Okay, why are you running the city from your mobile phones? I was talking to my colleagues in Huangshe, which is 70 kilometers from Wuhan. They had been sent home at the end of the week and they couldn't go back and run the city, and they told me why. And stories started to come out, and then about a week later, 2 COVID cases were discovered just near my house in Singapore. And I started talking to my colleagues, and we said, we have to do something about this. We have to raise awareness. We have to do something. And so what we did was we got the Chinese cities. There was no global pandemic declared. No country was admitting that there was a pandemic, including China, but the cities were willing to talk about how they were managing it. And we launched a webinar series called Cities on the Front Line, and we had hundreds of cities from around the world dialed into the first session, which was March 8th, a week before the WHO declared the pandemic. And I tell this story because that is the power of networks. And that has the power to save lives and to drive the right kinds of investment at the right time. So
We're hearing about the power of networks and the power of taking action at the city level and sharing that across networks. And now we are going to move to our third awardee, who is Andrew Melnik, who is going to talk to us about very deep challenges and facing them and taking action. Tell us what you were doing in Bucha.
First of all, thank you for the invitation, and of course I'm totally agree with you about... Sorry?
Is the mic on?
I'm totally agree that right person and right network is a key to success. About our story in Bucha, maybe you know, maybe not, so I shortly repeat. Before full-scale invasion, in Bucha lived about 60,000 people. After 2 months after liberation, in Bucha remained about 5,000 people. About 2,000 civilian was killed, and about 30,000 of buildings and social infrastructure was destroyed. So we need to spend about first year to rebuild social infrastructure and bring people back to city, because we understand if no schools, no kindergartens, no heating, no electricity, nothing, nobody will come. So first year we spent for rebuilding as more as we can, and now in Bucha lives almost 60,000 people again. About 10% of inhabitants, it's, as also you mentioned, it's internally replacement person from eastern part of Bucha, of Ukraine, and it's another one big challenge. We need to implement these people in our social infrastructure, in our business activity, in our economy, and so on, so on. So each maybe couple months we had new challenge. So first of all, in the beginning it was rebuilding social infrastructure. Secondly, it's rebuilding housing, apartments, homes, and so on and so on. And now we are on stage where we are looking for business development, economy development, and of course we are starting to think about sustainable development, because on each stage of this rebuilding and reconstruction, we keep in mind that we try to do as more as possible to rebuild it in the right way, in energy efficiency, in zero emission, and so on, so on. So that's why we use as more as possible renewable energy. We work very deeply with waste management. It's in private hands in Bucha, but it's worked quite good. And going back to what you told me before, right people, it's making big success. So, for example, myself especially, I work mainly with international partners, with donors, with sponsors, but on each day I'm trying to explain to guys in City Hall and to people around me that the best thing what we could bring from our partners and our friends all over the world, it's knowledge. it's even not some money, some fund, something like that. But because if you get money and don't know how to use it in proper way, you just lose it and that's all. So learn and study on each stage and try to get as best as you can from people who will try to help you. So yeah, I totally agree that right network and right people, it's a key to success. On level of each person, on level of city, on government level. So it's what we are trying to do.
And one word you haven't used, which is also clear in what you're saying, is the need for courage. So we congratulate you for taking the steps under these very difficult circumstances and showing leadership. And we have 3 exemplary leaders, and I want to know more, we want to know more about your accomplishments, what your leadership vision has brought about. And I mean, you were telling us before kind of a quick view of what can be done without federal action, without central action, even though obviously you rely, many people just rely on what the federal government. What were you able to accomplish at the local level?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to
Very short, like going from...
I want to do a comment first, and it's something that Andrew is saying, and we brush over it because it becomes part of our daily lives. We need to take presence and action in what is going on around the world. And we need to not forget it. And I think this is not a fight of Ukraine. This is not a conflict between Hamas and the Jewish state or Israel. This is something that involves all of us, and it has international repercussions and reverberations. Because in the end, we are seeing somebody that does not abide by the ethics and morals and laws that govern the world, and they are trying to change it by force. And they are doing it step by step, as was done in the 1940s and 1930s when all of us were thrust into war and changed our families and our lives. And we need to stand up and say, this is not enough. We need to do more. And we need to not forget it. And we need to not become numbed by what is going on every day. And I am humbled to be in this panel with you, because I've seen it in Venezuela, as I was talking to David. We get people every day coming in, and where do they get funding and they get support from who? They get support from Russia. They get support from Iran. And we are seeing that this happens every day, and we are not standing up to these bullies. We have to. So in a way, I would like to say that we need more of what you do, and that it moves. So anyway, onto the other page, what have we done, or what have we been able to do? And I think one thing that we were able to understand is that federal or national support will never be enough, and it will never get there in time. So what we were able to do was understand that finance was the most important thing we needed to do. So we started, and we took hold of our public finances. We started raising taxes in a way that was, I would say, suitable to promote economic development. So we have been the city that has grown the most. Just to give you an idea, a family in Barranquilla, northern coastal city, 1.4, 1.5 million people, 2.2 metropolitan area, was a household in Barranquilla had 50% of the income of a household in Bogota, the capital, 10 years ago. Today, a household in Barranquilla has 75% of the income of a household in Bogota. So we've halved the inequality of income while maintaining a lot of the costs of living down. And we have done that by what we call smart investments. Investing in sectors that can help drive the city, but also capturing value from that economic development that has been seen by our companies, by our urban development, and by our property tax. So it's sort of a win-win. We'll tax you more, but we'll invest, I would say, steadily in areas that develop assets, that develop capital, that develop economic opportunities. I think that has been the key. So every time we're doing an investment, be it our convention center, which made us, we didn't have tourism for business tourism. We developed a convention center right on the water, a 5-kilometer boardwalk, became the most visited public space in the country. 7 years later, just through the increase in property tax of that 200 hectares, we were able to recoup around, I would say, $300 million in investment just in the boardwalk. And we got ACOM to say, let's develop an idea of a new city, the city by the water, and give them new licensing, new zoning, so that can capture more value. So I think, in a sense, it's understanding that the money is there if you're able to do things that, I would say, develop value and that bring communities together and not stay seated waiting for national government or somebody else to just hand you things because they're not going to.
Can I just ask quickly as a follow-up? Tell us about the park and the rate parks.
Okay, yeah. So we started working on an idea of, first we got healthcare, then we got education rolling, and then we started seeing that we had no public spaces that were quality spaces, and that creates inequality. So we started creating these small and metropolitan parks where people could come together, and we built them with the community. So it was sort of a co-creation and co-planning that was amazing because it started bringing in the community, and we started planning the parks with them. And then they own the parks, and so they're the ones that make sure that we maintain them. They are the ones that make sure that they have the proper use. So they're the ones asking us every day for more recreation, for more sports, for more public uses, and for changes. So the parks change after a while. Because, for example, this court is not being used like we want. If we make these small changes, then we'll get a different type of sports in here. And we have this constant communication. And that is what garnered us the WRI Prize for Cities for our parks system as an innovative approach. But then we started seeing that we had degraded areas in the city. And we said, we have marshlands, we have oceans, we have a beach, and we're actually putting we're putting wastewater into those. We're degrading the ecosystem, and we're I would say ending the mangrove forest. So we said, let's turn this around and let's build an eco park that's 1,000 hectares, and let's make it an attraction of the city for ecotourism. So let's now get ecotourism in there. We built this park. It's opened. In the first phase is going to be open this year for the second phase, and it's become a huge driver for a different type of city that reminded people that they live within biodiversity, that we have a great spot for bird watching and for a connection with marshlands and wetlands and the ocean. And now, for example, the Audubon Society of the US is partnering up with us to make it a destination. We're going to bring economic opportunity, but also quality of life to the city. And that, when I said that, I said they were gonna probably boo me off because I was saying we're going to spend $40 million, $50 million on an eco park, and somebody was going to say we have other needs. But interestingly enough, nobody said we were wasting our money, and nobody said that this shouldn't be done. Everybody appropriated the sense of urgency for nature action in a city with so much need. So I was impressed with my constituents because they took it up and they made it their own.
Fantastic. Lauren, you're involved with hundreds of CROs now. What do you see as the biggest challenges that they are facing? I'm sure that's a huge question because each one is from a different context.
Sure, they are from different contexts, and I think one of the most important things in the network is meeting cities where they are. At the same time, we see a lot of common trends and challenges, and we actually just finished our Chief Resilience Officer survey. We do an annual survey every year, and it comes up with data on the most critical challenges that cities are facing. And it probably won't come as a surprise to most of you working in this space, but climate comes at the very top of that list, as does economic opportunity. And I'm actually going to steal a quote from the UK Foreign Minister who said, you know, if climate change was a Marvel villain, right, like an actual sentient being, then its evil superpower would be water, right? So most of our cities are very concerned about how they're going to manage changes in water, either too much or too little, and also related to climate heat. That's increasingly and very quickly becoming one of the biggest challenges that our cities are facing. So when we look out at that challenge in the network, then of course we try to look at some of the common solutions that are happening. And I think that this is where you have, and I always say like resilience is a team sport, right? This is where you actually see some really powerful coalitions coming together to deal with water and to deal with heat in cities. And I think this is where, Jeannie, there's some very interesting solutions that we see coming to play. And you asked about some of the things that, you know, where there's potential for more engagement or where people can get more involved. And I think that knowledge exchange around planning for more heat and different kinds of water is really essential.
We've got a big job in front of us. So Andrew, in addition to the work you've been doing with cities and helping them think about sustainable rebuilding, you've also been dealing with children. Would you like to tell us a little bit about the work you're doing with children?
I care about this project less than a month, so I know not so many minutes about charity building, but briefly, it's a charitable Ukrainian foundation. What exactly on the first day of the full-scale invasion, they took about 3,000 kids from orphan houses on the eastern part of Ukraine and through Romania delivered them to Turkey. Maybe it wasn't the best choice for that time, but they did as they what they can, and past 2 years, these 3,000 orphan kids lives in Turkey in 2 hotels for what they're paying. And this foundation care about those education, those lives, those food, clothes, everything. And of course, they need some maybe international partners as well in help them find new families and maybe educate some of them because time to time kids grow, it's nature. And each maybe year, 20, 30, 50 from them need to be educated in some college and universities everywhere, and it could be quite hard to be Ukrainian, for example, has no family, lived past years in Turkey, and need to find some university, college, pass exams, and so on, so on. So it's also another one big special program for international development and cooperation. But yeah, it's what we're trying to do, and I'm going to help them to develop this direction as well. And first of all, it's find new family for all these kids, and secondary, it's find right place to educate and training program for them. So, yes.
So you have given us, once again, a courageous indication of making things better in a very difficult situation and taking action and being a leader. So I want to ask all 3 of you, and then perhaps to come back to you, Andrew, this question. What lessons do you have for us in becoming a leader, the challenge of becoming a leader, and how you successfully took on this role? Obviously with partners, but you are all exemplary who are awarded today Leadership Award for Creative Action. So help us to understand what you have learned in your leadership path.
I would say to listen. Not to listen through only research and aggregation of data, but like actually listen. Like go to the place you're planning or the communities that you're impacting and hear them out.
If you start right away and you recognize them and you find a way, then you're going to work through the process and you're going to find that they're willing to compromise along the way. So every great idea has a negative consequence for somebody. If you can address it head on and not try and just negate it, then things will be easier. I think those are the 2 major learnings that I have learned, some easily, some the hard way.
Sounds to me listening and engaging. What do we learn? Lauren.
I think building off what Jaime said around listening, when when you're running, I think, any kind of organization that has beneficiaries, it's to really empower those beneficiaries and go, I think, further to really co-create as much as possible. Because when you're co-creating solutions, they're going to be durable, right? They're going to last when people have ownership of what they're doing. And this is a room filled with folks who work on urban and local community initiatives. So I think this will be a familiar one. But when we're transitioning from a Rockefeller-driven project to, a multi-donor initiative with our cities. We asked our cities, what do you want this to look like? What's going to be the most helpful for you in this next phase? And they said, well, we want to keep connecting to our peers. We want to collaborate to deliver initiatives together that are not one-off, but last a longer time. And Jeannie, we've been talking a lot about portfolios and how we make those more interesting. And they said, we really want to leverage more resources. And Jaime, you mentioned this. You also mentioned this about partnerships and the right funding. If you cannot bring value to your beneficiaries, whether that is the next technical solution or that opportunity to highlight their own work and attract investment, or whether you're directly bringing investment, then they won't have time for you. So you have to, bring really demonstrable value, I think, is the other thing that you have to co-create and really engage with folks in.
So co-creation and partnerships. Andrew, do you have lessons learned in your very difficult circumstances for how to take leadership for improvement?
Yes, of course. For example, if you are interested in shipbuilding, you could try to find people who came and help you to build a ship, or you just could say people how beautiful ocean, and people will come to you and ask you to help them to build this ship, for example. So it's a strategy what we are trying to implement quite successfully, for example, in Bucha, and as you also tell us, about involvement of community, of people to what you are doing. For example, you would like to make a park or to green zone or something like that, and someone wants it, someone no, but if you example how could it work and how everyone would be beneficial from it, the people will came to you and ask about let's do this. So we are trying to attract population and community and our public organization as more as possible, and in each action to have support from our community.
People want to be part of the solution.
Yeah.
And now we want to invite you all to be part of the discussion. And we have mics for you, so put your hand up with a question and we will bring you into the conversation. Amy and Arden will bring you mics. Any
Question right there, right here. Right there.
Please tell us who you are.
Hi.
Introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. Hi, my name's Riddhi. I used to study here. I graduated last year from the city planning program. And I just wanted to hear a little bit more about your thoughts as they relate to co-creation, because all three of you come from very different contexts in terms of the work that you've done. You've worked with different communities. And I just wanted to hear a bit more about your experiences of how you had to adapt methods of co-creation to your local context.
Ooh, I have a favorite story about this. So I mentioned before that the framework that launched 100 cities was the City Resilience Framework that was designed by Rockefeller and Arup. And we brought this framework to 100 cities, and we were ready to use this as the foundation for our strategy. And when we got actually to Colombia, this was in Medellin, they said to us, your framework's broken. It doesn't capture education. There was just a whole social sector missing. And we had to adapt around that and create space for that. Similarly, we heard back from cities, this doesn't focus enough on governance, right? And unless we get the governance right, all of these other drivers, right, whether there's a built environment or ecosystem services or social systems, if there's no good governance, we can't implement anything. How are we going to do that? We actually want to create a first set of strategies around governance, and then we'll talk to you about your framework. So we had to be adaptable to that in the initial phases. And we also had to be really mindful that in every context that we were working in, there were usually really good partners who were locally ready to work on this. And I remember as director of Asia, this was a battle that I had to fight, because when we started the organization, we were trying to be very efficient by having a pre-qualified set of consultants who were going to deliver the strategy in all 100 cities worldwide. And I inherited a contract for a very famous consulting partner who will remain nameless in this conversation to deliver the resilience strategy of the city of Seoul, which is an extremely high capacity city, which has its own institute on urban planning. And the consultants came in, and I met them at the hotel before we went to the institute, and I asked the consultants, how many times have you been to Seoul? Can you guess what they said? Never. Exactly, 0. And they were fired 3 days later, and we rehired local institute. So I think, these kinds of things where you have to co-create with the city, you have to ask them questions, what do they want to actually do together? And I think that more recently, and around mobilizing finance, one of the best lessons that I had around this was actually just kind of questioning your partners around why they aren't doing more. And I had a conversation 2 years ago at COP26 with David Howden. And I don't know how many folks know who David Howden is. He's one of the largest independent insurance brokers in the world. And he said, Lauren, there's all this mounting climate risk. Everyone's talking about it. How come more cities are not taking out insurance policies? Well, David, they don't know how to afford that when they're trying to just build critical infrastructure, and no one is actually helping them structure their portfolios. And he said, well, we'll do that. And I said, you will? And he said, yeah, sure. Tell me how to do it. So we spent the next 6 months co-designing a program with our cities and Howden Insurance to launch fellows who now spend 6 months at a clip sitting in a city responding to a question that the city has designed and asked of the insurance sector. And we've done that now. We're in our 2nd year, and we're developing solutions on every continent where we work, where there have never been insurance solutions before for these kinds of problems.
Amazing.
Well, I would two quick things. One is co-creation is, for example, high level is the commission where Jeannie, Lauren, and a lot of us work on, is the Global Commission on Urban SDG Finance, where we're actually sitting, all of us, in a commission and saying, this current mix of financing doesn't work for cities. How do we make it better? And we're sitting with the multinational banks, we're multilateral, we're sitting with the development banks, we're sitting with the private sector, public sector, mayors, governors, et cetera, the academia, and we're saying, how do we fix this? So it's co-creating, even with what we could say are the culprits of this, because they are the ones that started to ignore cities. So that has been fun, and I think it's going to have great value, because in a sense, we are all coming together and looking for a different avenue of success. Even though you could say that we could have ignored them and said they don't work, and we're gonna propose something different. It takes more work, because you have to tiptoe around issues. You have to make sure that you're not being, I would say, too bold and trying to erase what they believe in. So you have to take into account the other person, but then you come up with a more lasting solution, because you're paving the way for success beforehand, and not having to try and just rip through them. And the second, on a city scale, on a community scale, I would say the most important thing is understanding that you are not right, and what you're thinking of is sort of like a guideline, but that it needs to and can change according to what they say. And that has become building in phases and building things that we can change during time. So when we are building public spaces, we will build the first area of the public space, and then we'll start doing surveys, for example, and we'll ask people what they liked, what they didn't like, what they would like to see on the next one. So then the next little phase of the boardwalk, for example, we would add what they thought, and then we would remove what they didn't like, and then we would also start doing things that can be changed. So we'll add something that we know will be there for a year and that we can take out and we'll add something else. And that has been, I would say, so it became not like a survey, what do you want on this space, but an ongoing survey of how can we build the next part and how can we improve what's already there. And that has made a big difference.
Andrew, do you have any closing thoughts?
As a city, we're a couple steps behind of this discussion and this question, but yes, I could add that it's the same problem even on our level. It's to explain people why you need to do this in this way, in this way, in this way, and how efficient it could be, because people on local level or in cities, they have each day problems, not only in Bucha, but about daily life and daily work. And nobody thinks too far as maybe 1 to 5 years later. And you need to have to explain the people and to city governors, to mayors, why you need to do this. Even maybe you will get an effect after it, maybe in 5, 10 years later. So yes, it's a problem, could be, but
I think we could spend all afternoon speaking with you, but I think people may be a little hungry. And therefore, I think it's time to give your awards. So let's join. Thank you. Congratulations.
thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. These are indeed resilience warriors. Let's give them a hand.